We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
What do you think about the Laker team now?
You follow the box scores, the games every day? Just the Lakers.
You're kidding. That is really a compliment. I was pleased to see you smile at the top of our show because once the game starts, you have a game face. You don't smile much out there.
I don't think you have to do things for money anymore.
Correct.
What's up, Laker fans? Welcome to the Laker Film Room podcast. I'm Pete, joined by Darius, and today we're going to talk a little bit of Max Christie. Max was drafted in 2022. The Lakers bought a pick, the 35th pick in the draft, to select him, which I think speaks to a certain degree of how he was viewed coming in the door, right? That's a conversation where it's like, hey, if this guy is available by this pick, and that's Jesse's corner of the world. Minds come together and be like, hey, this guy is worth it. He's worth making a move for. Didn't play very much at all his rookie year, and I think played a lot less than a lot of people wanted to this past season, D. But still, Lakers re-sign him 4 years, $32 million. That's part of the value of signing. There's always a discussion about, hey, should you sign a second-round pick to a 2-year deal, to one of them 4-year deals, because it could be great value. I think part of the rationale is, hey, if you sign him to a 2-year deal, you can sign him to their second deal at a fairly reasonable price, in which if Max turns out to be a pretty good role player, which I think he's got the capability to, 4 years and $32 million is a great contract to be on from team perspective. But yeah, D, talk to me about where you're at with Max Christie.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think he could have played a bigger role last season. And so I was one of those fans that would have liked to have seen him play more. The things that he's good at are useful and contribute to winning. The things that he is not as good at, I think, need to be resolved with reps. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, well, you're not as good as we'd like you to be right now. Well, the way that he's going to get to that place is by playing him. And so by not playing him last season to the level that, especially earlier on in the year, you probably missed out on potential rewards at the time of the season in which you would have wanted him most to be able to play the end of the year and then into the playoffs. So for me, I'm still pretty high on Max as a young player whose physical tools and the things that he projects to do well at the NBA level and how those can translate to winning basketball. There are still some things, though, where I'm like, hey, I'd like you to do those things a little bit better. And it didn't help to me that towards the middle part and end of the season, when the team invested in other players, that particularly after the Lakers got Dinwiddie and there just weren't a lot of guard minutes in general. And then when Gabe came back, there were even less, that most of his minutes came in garbage time. For that Lakers team especially, there was like zero evaluation process happening because they played such an unserious brand of basketball. It was like the A student who got sent to detention for some reason and was just there every single day when it came to Max. Like that was just such an unserious group. The things that you want Max to be able to work on weren't going to happen with those groups at all. So I think I'm optimistic about what he will be this upcoming season, particularly because I think his defense translates and I think his catch and shoot numbers suggest that he's going to be a quality outside shooter as a 3-and-D player.
Yeah, and so let's talk about some of the specifics of what that means. I was watching tape on Max this morning, and I wanted to start on the defensive end. And one of the things from watching him, first off, if you cover basketball or if you're curious about it, just a bit of advice. It's way easier to pick up patterns when you put like by like. And so being able to look at every Max isolation play or Max closeouts next to each other, you see things that you don't see if it's kind of happening randomly throughout the game. So just a rec, if you cover the game, that's something that's very helpful. And in doing that, I was like, oh, I understand why Darvin played Cam over Max. I don't agree. Please don't confuse. It's still the wrong choice. But it really stood out to me that Max doesn't apply a lot of ball pressure when he defends in isolation. And it's more about giving space. He's always in a proper stance. He's, it's very fundamentally sound in a lot of ways, but it's a very containment, not aggressive style of defense. And so if you're trying to replace Jared Vanderbilt, or if you have a style of defense where it's like a Gabe Vincent, get up into his jersey, pressure the ball type of style, then Max is probably not going to be your go-to type of guy. And this is something that Cam is very disruptive at. And he's a great athlete and he can get over screens and he can turn his hips better than Max can. And so it's still the wrong decision, I believe, but it was notable to me watching him this morning that he's very much like a containment, not a pass rush type of defender on the ball, while being just an incredible closeout guy. I love how he closes out to three-point shooters, just how he contests jumpers in general. I view players as being generally through three archetypes. You've either got speed, length, or strength as the primary attribute, and Max is his length. And so his ability to contest high, to do things fundamentally correctly and then drop down and help on the boards is super helpful. But it stood out to me as we talk so much about point of attack type of defense, and I don't think that's really what he is. I kind of view it as kind of the defensive version of, we always talk about Austin being better as a ball handler with another ball handler on the floor. I think I kind of view Max defensively similar to that, where if he's the second best perimeter defender out there, I think he's going to be really good. If he's forced to guard the main guys on other teams, I think he's going to get beat a lot of times. And so just curious your thoughts, what you've seen from Max defensively.
Yeah, I think you spelled it out well in terms of his strengths and his, I wouldn't call it a weakness in terms of his point of attack stuff, his general approach. It is a contained style. I think containing the ball is pretty important. To make a football analogy, it's a player who is good in press versus a player who is good in drop coverage or off coverage. And Max is great in off coverage. He keeps the ball in front of him and then he contests high and he forces a lot of misses that way when he's defending. When guys are able to get into his body and then move him off, he still hasn't developed his I'm 25 years old strength because he's still 21 years old. And I think as he develops even more physically and gets his natural strength there rather than his weightlifting strength as like coming out of college and then into the pros, that he'll be even better at this sort of thing. But the way that I looked at like the Max versus Cam stuff is that Cam was very good at, to me, is like being a disruptor offensively, but that came with so much risk that he was not as good at the point of attack as what you would have liked him to be based off of his tools. And so you made a video on Bronny a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things you noted about Bronny is that he can sometimes hop step around and doesn't necessarily slide as fundamentally. And guys who can be disruptive and passing lane guys, that's very much a part of their defensive arsenal. It's like they are quick twitch. I am leaping at the ball like see ball, get ball. And that's something that Cam does really well too, right? And so, but you are subject to then shiftier guards who can beat you at the point of attack. And so the same method that Cam might use to evade a screen, which is like hopping up off of both feet and then getting over the top of the ball and then turning and shifting his hips in order to stay with the guy, that's great. But when a guy then declines the screen and goes the opposite direction, then you're toast. And the thing I see from Max and why I think Max is a guy who can scale down defensively and guard smaller guards well is that he is able to give space and then still stay in front and then still contest. The best version of this that I've seen in the last like 10 years or so is Klay Thompson. And so Clay used to defend the Dame Lillards of the world and all of those smaller scoring guards. That's who the Warriors would deploy him on. And Clay was this big and strong and long and had great positional size. Max, to me, is basically Klay Thompson size. Is he as strong as Clay? He's not yet. But I think in like a season or two, he will be. And so I agree with what you're saying in that if Max is playing next to Vando, and then he's backed up by Anthony Davis, I think teams are going to be in trouble offensively against the Lakers defense in a lot of ways. But I also think that if Max is out there with some lesser defenders, but he's still able to play his style and not asked to be like, get into this guy's chest and try to turn him and do all of this stuff. I think that the ask on him last season was misplaced. And when he wasn't as good at the things that you wanted him to do, then he got asked out of the rotation. And it's just sort of like know what tool you have here and use it appropriately. So let's go to break here, Pete. And when we come back, I want to dive a little bit more into how Max projects himself to be next season, because I heard him talking on a recent pod and he said a couple of interesting things.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
So that like defensive pressure thing, Pete, I think that Max probably understands that about himself as well. And I heard him on Jovan Buha's pod the other day, and Max was talking about like picking up full court more and doing more, like extending his defense. And I think that's an interesting idea for Max to have about himself and where he sort of sees where his progression can come defensively. And so I don't want to necessarily throw that idea out to you singularly, like comment on how he will do at this, but more the broader idea of him growing defensively and what you see from him there.
Well, I think he's got a great motor. Just start with that. And on a team that we're constantly having these discussions that LeBron's really old, AD's also over 30. We got to have a way to get through 82. Max Christie is somebody who can help the Lakers do that. Even the month that Cam had in November was an example of this, where it's like, be disruptive, get us some wins in, against lesser teams or even Phoenix, right, early on, but just fill a certain role with your motor and with your ability to go, that I think that hearing Max might be picking guys up full court is great. It's an example of a way we can put pressure on the other team to get fatigued. And so those guys, I see connect in this way on the offensive end of having like offensive motor, just possession after possession be a threat. And so with Max, there was a very distinct difference that I saw between when he was guarding really high-end guys, and this speaks to your point about if he's out there with lesser defenders. When he was guarding Shea or Devin Booker, DeJounte Murray, those top guards, and those guys are all over the league. There's so much talent that, it seems like, oh, well, if he's not guarding those guys, great. Actually, no, he has to be able to, that is one of the jobs of that type of two, if they have the skill set. He gives them so much space that it's kind of practice moves, and they just have to make like one move to shake him, and they got the separation that they need. And so it's more about it's to me more of a personnel thing, D, of when you can do that, when you can deploy that. So it's like if Vando's being a pain in the ass on one guy, and then Max is being a pain in the ass on your secondary ball handler, then I think you're in business.
The guys that you mentioned, those are also physical wing style guards, right? And so Booker wants to take the space that you give him and then eliminate it as well, and then body you and be physical against you in order to get you off. And that's, to me, where I think his biggest growth is as a player. He has to get stronger, and he has to use his physical tools and his length to not just always be the, I'm going to give you cushion, but now I'm strong enough to say, oh, you're going to try to bump me off. No, I'm going to take that bump. And then when you try to elevate, my length is too good, and I'm going to contest this shot well. And this is why I think he's been better against smaller guards. It's because they don't have that same physicality against him, and they try to bump him off, and he's like, well, look, I'm 6'5", 6'6", and way more than you already. So if you're trying to nudge me off of my spot and then elevate, that's how I can block your shot. A great example was against like Dante DiVincenzo, right? Max is a little bit bigger than DiVincenzo. They're probably equal in strength. DiVincenzo is older than Max, but he's not such a superior athlete where he's like the Devin Booker class of strong. And so DiVincenzo tries to jab and then body him and then step back and get that jumper off, and Max just blocks it right at the top of the release. And that's what he's going to need to be able to get to against some of these stronger guards or more athletically imposing guards. And if he can make strides, it's not going to come all in one season just because he plays more. That's not what it's going to be. But to me, over the next 18 months, if he can be, if he can make incremental strides over and over and over again to the point where that's no longer a weakness, I think he's going to be a really excellent on-ball defensive player that can play 25 plus minutes a night, and you don't have to worry at all about his defensive utility. In fact, you could deploy him in a way where he's a positive player on that end.
So let's talk about him on the offensive end. To me, that's the place where he had a convincing advantage over Cam, is that he had a very clear role on the offensive end. And to illustrate that, here are some of his synergy numbers. I'm going to read you the play type and then what percentile that Max is in. And so it's scaled from 0 to 100. 100 is the best, 0 is the worst, 50 being average. So spot up attempts. This is what he did by far the most. He did it 41% of the time. Spot up attempts, 1.31 points per possession, putting him in the 96th percentile. Just about equally good at shooting the three and then attacking the closeout. So this to me is that clear offensive role. Everything else except for one category, right? So spot ups, great. Pick and roll ball handler, 18th percentile. In transition, 10th percentile. Miscellaneous plays, which are just kind of slot plays, 2nd percentile. Isolation, 11th percentile. Handoffs, 19th percentile. And then cuts in the 81st percentile, 1.46 points per possession. So that's the other area, D, where he's very clearly has some value. And so offensively, to me, Max fits a very strict definition. Now, could he be more over time? Of course, but he's got a very strict utility right now. And there's a benefit to that, and there's certainly a downside to that. So kind of talk to me what you think when you hear numbers like that.
You remember when Josh Hart was here and he sort of got mad at the coaching staff that one season where he came out of Summer League as, I think he was like MVP of Summer League.
Yeah, he was MVP that year. He was great.
And he did a bunch of on-ball stuff, and he had talked during the summer about how, like, this is one of the things the coaches asked me to do. Like, I thought I was going to, and then when he went to the regular season, he was spot up and cutting guy, and he's just like, what the hell happened? I did all of this on-ball work over the summer to get myself better. I showed in Summer League that I had some utility at this, and now I'm standing in the corner a bunch and taking spot up shots. I didn't think that this was my role. He said a bunch of this after the trade, right? And so felt a little sour grapes, but also I felt like it was like there's truth in that.
Absolutely. That's how young players think, or a lot of them do. Yeah.
It's so I look at Max and I see a player who, similar to Josh Hart in that, but he hasn't had the success yet. Like when he had that second year summer league stuff that he was doing, it was like, oh man, look at Max. Like, he's handling the ball. He's getting 20 points a game. He's running pick and rolls. And then he gets to the NBA season and he actually can't do much of any of that stuff at a high enough level against actual professionals, right? Like at the NBA level. And so what I think about from Max is that, to me, he sounds like the perfect player to put in an offense next to LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and a shot creating guard. He's a guy who can cut off of the ball and finish with force at the basket. And he's a player who can make a spot up jumper and then attack a closeout. These are things he's going to have to do. The things I'd like to see him be able to do a little bit more is the stuff that D'Lo was doing, as like I'm going to set a flare screen and then I'm going to cut. I'm naturally relocating it when I see the floor shifting some. I'm pointing to a teammate and saying, you go here so I can go there, in order to open things up for everyone. Now, again, this is what I'm saying, is that the way that you're able to do those things over time is with reps. And he didn't get enough reps last season. And that's why, to me, of all of the players who had a bit of a wasted season last year, and I think about like D'Lo being on the bench after his rough start to the season, the same for Austin, those sorts of things where, like, not giving Vando enough reps with the starters once he got healthy, Rui not starting until January. These are all like wasted parts of the season where I'm just like, man, if any of those things are just a little bit different, the Lakers could have had 2 or 3 more wins over the course of the season, maybe even more. But Max's entire year of you're buried behind these guys, and when you get reps, it's because someone's hurt. And then, but once that player's back, he's instantly back into the lineup in front of you. The Cam stuff was super frustrating for me when that stuff happened, when Max was really starting to show that he could play, and then Cam gets healthy and it's just like Cam's right back into the role that he was in before. And I just feel like, give Max the reps, because these things are not strengths now. And I don't ever expect Max to be like, I can run 5 or 6 pick and rolls a game at high efficiency, but he does need to be able to come off a DHO, Pete, and then dribble into a mid-range jumper. I'd love to know, and you don't have to have this information now, but it's like, what was he like coming off of screens and curls and things like that? Because his mid-range is pretty good, I think, and he's very comfortable shooting that 15, 16-footer, even against a good contest, because he's got a high release point and is a good athlete. But he needs to be able to do that off of DHOs as well. And his decision-making in a crowd needs to improve. But again, it's like, you can't expect a young player who doesn't play very much to be able to do that stuff at an NBA level just yet. He needs the time. And that's why I'm happy that the team invested in him with a contract, and that to this point, they actually haven't gotten anyone that's going to slot above him.
Max's decision-making, to me, is the key to how far into the playoffs he can play. Let's take another break and talk about it. So you know how in Redick's introductory press conference, I think Rob brought up that the Lakers were looking to like create an app for player development. And this is something that what you were just talking about kind of plays into this idea of, is there a way to get a young player the repetition necessary, maybe not all the way, but part of the way, in making the different decisions that players face over and over again on the court without actual NBA playing time? I am getting older, and as such, I am like, I'm skeptical, right? Maybe a younger version of me would be like, all right, I think that can work. But I think that there's no replacement for playing time. But I'm curious to see what direction that type of stuff goes in. And so Max, the thing that really stands out to me on tape from I don't know if this is going to work standpoint, is his passing and just processing, decision-making. It's not a simple shoot the catch and shoot 3, shoot the dribble pull up, which is, like you said, he's got a really beautiful left, right, going right, mid-range jumper, or going to the basket and trying to dunk it. if he's got to do something out of that, especially if it's a dribbled, a passing read, especially if it's with his left hand, it can get very dicey very quickly. And so I think there is a certain amount of like, how do we get young guys reps to sort of get better at that at the very least before they get their real NBA minutes? Because it is that chicken or the egg problem that you're talking about, D, is it's like, hey, if this guy's not good enough at these sorts of things, it's hard to play him right now. But if you don't play him, he doesn't actually get good at those things.
One of the things that frustrated me most about Max was his passing reads and his timing on his passes. He's not a very good post-entry passer. He's not someone who has very good feel for how and when to throw the ball like into the post. I saw LeBron kind of give Max some side eye and get some frustration.
LeBron goes after Max. That was one thing I noticed last year is like LeBron would get, and maybe it's just because Max can take it and will take that well. I've noticed LeBron has different styles with different guys, but that definitely caught my eye. It was like he can piss LeBron off.
So when Max is throwing some of these flat angle passes and it looks like he's throwing it to the other team, you know that's not what he's trying to do. Obviously, Max is trying to make the right play, but he just didn't have a lot of feel for that. And when you play with LeBron and Anthony Davis, those are the types of passes that are actually critical to functioning within the offense. And if you're not good at that, then you have to make up for it in other ways, right? And this is another reason why I could understand why it's like, oh, there goes Max again, making the same mistake that he, right? And how that might limit things. But that, of course, ignores all of the other positives that he would do, where it's just like, there goes Max again, rebounding his position. And
that's right.
Right? When no one's actually talking about that with other players. Give him the chance to do these things and improve at these things. But I also think that entering year 3, this is where he needs to show very early on that I can do these things better and I'm ready to make the leap. To a certain extent, if you have any predisposed notion about like, this is what a player doesn't do well, and now I'm looking for those things, coaches do that too. In fact, they do it a lot. And when they view you a certain way and they're looking for reasons potentially to say like, oh, I'm going to play this other dude in front of you. If you continue to make those mistakes, you will be out of the rotation. Like I think that happened to Jackson Hayes, for example, last season where he was fouling too much. The coaches had consistently asked him to stop fouling. He couldn't stop doing it. And it didn't matter that he ran harder or was a lob threat or like was good on the glass and could do these other things that Wood was not doing as well. It's just like, nope, we want you to stop doing this stuff and you can't. So you're going to come sit with us. I think Max is going to get more opportunity to play through mistakes, but I also think, to the point I was making earlier, is that there's vets on this team who will sour on you if you continue to make the same mistakes over and over again. And LeBron does not have a lot of patience for stuff like that, and rightfully so. I think that LeBron is a guy that wants to see you make the strides in the areas where you know that you need to improve. And so that's what I'm looking for from Max as well, Pete.
And that's part of the leadership, right? Is being able to look at a guy and be like, I demand better of you. You can do better. I know you can. Let's go. You know, that's part of LeBron in the position. And not every teammate can do that to every teammate, but that's LeBron, right? And so that I think is a good thing. And I think that Max is ready to meet that challenge. And so in a general sense, what would be a successful season in your eyes for Max?
I'd like to see Max be a 3-shift player at minimum. I'd love for him to be in the like 8 to 12 points a game sort of guy. I'd love for him to continue to shoot in that 38 to 42% range on catch and shoot threes. I'd love for him to hit 40% on open threes, whether they're from the corner or above the break. And defensively, I'd like to see him make some of the strides that we were talking about earlier. If all of those things happen, Max is going to prove that he's a capable rotation player and he's going to earn his minutes. And if that happens, I think he's going to help, man. I think he's going to help offensively. I think he's going to help defensively. I'm particularly excited about him playing in lineups with Vando and AD, because I think that he can make a lot of hay as a defender in those specific groups. And I mentioned this a few pods ago, but him and AD their two-man pairing, I think they were like +6 or +8 net rating. There's reason to be optimistic that when slotted in the right groups, he can be a player that helps you win while on the court. And those are the positives that I think it's just like these are well within his grasp.
For me, he's probably the most important film work guy on the team because I think that his processing and his reads are it's the main gap in his game right now that I think if he can address some of that, and that comes with the reps, but it's also doing film work. And I'm super curious how Redick implements film work and what type of drills they run. I've heard a lot about like different breakdown drills, which I'm a big believer in, that he's been doing in the time that they have, right? Running guys through all of that. And so, what kind of drills are implemented to help improve on making reads and decision-making and all of that. And if he does, I think you have a player that can really help deep into the playoffs. He is that prototype of guy that if he knows how to read the game, then he can stick around because he contributes on both ends. To me, this is the magic formula for role players is, can you hit a three? Can you grab a rebound? Can you defend? And how much you can do those three things can really keep you on the court all the way through the NBA Finals. And so I think that how he's able to take the opportunity that I think he's going to get and then take the evidence from it and review it. And I think he's got a good heart and a good motor for this type of stuff and be like, okay, I can do this better. I can do that better. And how the coaches are guiding him along the way there. I think that's going to tell the story of his season.
Where do you think he slots into the rotation?
I think he's our backup 2. I think he's our backup 2 and Connect is our backup 3. I think Rui comes off the bench and Vando starts, but that's just, I have no idea where Redick's head is at on that. And he's talked a lot more about Rui than Vando, so maybe I'm making that up in my own mind. But yeah, Max to me is our backup 2. Where do you see him?
Yeah, I see him as the fourth guard.
Yeah.
So I see him behind Gabe in that idea.
Sure.
And to me, if you want to know what like a really, really successful season looks like for Max Christie is that he supplants Gabe as being the guy that is just like, we actually trust you more to do things because of your positional size, your ability to hit a spot up 3, and being similarly a low usage offensive player who has highish upside defensively to guard smaller guards. Right. And so that's the idea we have for Gabe.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Is like, you're going to go guard these smaller guards and you can be an off-ball worker who has some ball handling skills. And I think Gabe has Max lapped when it comes to ball handling stuff and being that on-ball player who can run a pick and roll and get into a shot. But Max can catch him and surpass him, I think, in several other parts of the game because he's already a better rebounder than Gabe. And defensively, he's got way more tools than Gabe, even though Gabe has like a sturdier frame and has the ability to like switch in ways. That's another thing we didn't talk about with Max was switching and things like that. But I think that's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, this is an ongoing conversation. An important year for Max Christie and the Lakers. All right, this was fun. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Lakers. But until then, you've been listening to Laker Film Room Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.
James has got it in low to McHale. McHale wants to turn. He's double teamed. Just pass out in front. Broken up by Worthy. Tip to Magic. Worthy dies on his belly. Magic scores.
There's Magic got it. Magic fires. It's good. They will. Lakers win the game. The Lakers win the game. Rebound of Lonnie. 3 seconds left. Van Exel to win it. It's on the way. Good.
Kobe Bryant, 48 points, 16 rebounds. Shot with his 8th block shot that ties an NBA Finals record.
A lot of Laker fans sticking around for this.
You're seeing something that's very rare indeed. A Laker to get MVP chance
in Boston. Of all places.
Are you kidding me?
Kobe, hard to believe.
Are you kidding me? Unreal. Are you kidding me?
Lakers looking to push. Bryant spinning in the lane. Back for Gasol. Pretty pass. And it's back to a 3-point game.
Kobe Bryant picked up by Bell.
There's the move. 2, 1.
Miss it. Unbelievable. For the victory. It's over.
Shot clock now to 5. Bryant. Yes. And that was a little tap to Alvin Gentry.
add insult to injury, Kobe. I mean, what a shot. I mean, you can't defend that. Are you kidding me?
2.1 seconds remaining. Denver a foul to give. Jokic trying to disrupt Rondo. He puts it in. Here's Davis, 4-3 in the win. Oh, it's good! Anthony Davis has won it for the Lakers! James again. Oh, he hits another one. LeBron James putting together a closing quarter against the Nuggets.
This historic 2020 NBA championship belongs to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers conquer the bubble, and banner number 17 will soon hang in the rafters.